Going to give it directly over to Jon for your presentation. Take it away.
All right. Thank you very much, Brittany and everyone at Insight for the invitation. Let me set all this thing up and share the screen and blah, 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 and do the thing. And can y'all see that? Blink once if you can see it. Blink twice if not. I'm kidding.
Got it.
Okay, cool. So we're pretty much going to dive right into the project that I've been working on, Stranger Fruit, and basically a bit about, the project, how it started, the roots and everything, and how it's gotten to where it is now, and its importance of, the moment being right now. So there are a few things that I'll refer back to often in the talk, and two of those things are this idea of research and reference. I use that a lot in my practice, and I think it's like super valuable to learn from for any artist moving forward. I know it definitely helps me in every work that I do, not just this project. Why is this not working? There we go. So the project all began with this image in 2014. The project Stranger Fruit was created in response to the murders of African-American men due to police violence. This image, like I said, it was 2014. I was unsure of what I wanted to create, but I knew that the need to create existed. I really just didn't know how I wanted to go about it. So while this was 2014, the concept really began in 2008. I had just come back from Vienna, visiting my sister and my family, and the next day that I was going back to work was the verdict of the Sean Bell trial. Sean Bell was the young man who was murdered at his bachelor party in Jamaica, Queens. I'm born and raised in Queens, New York. I spent a lot of time in Queens and Jamaica itself, so I'm very familiar with that area. And this, really stayed with me. These images when they happened. The murder was actually 2006. The verdict was 2008. And I remember that feeling of the, officers getting off and, no justice being provided, and just really being sad about, the whole situation. Later that year, 2008, one of my good friends was getting married, and I was one of the groomsmen, and at his bachelor party, that's all I could think about was, what if this was happening to him? What if this was happening to us? And, what about the family? Like, what happens with the family that's left, after the news coverage and, the videos that go viral showing you the actual footage. Then there's the trial, but then what? What happens, 1 week later, 1 month later, years later? How is the family supposed to, continue after, these tragedies continue to occur, and for nothing? There's nothing that can be said to justify any of this. So that was something that was always on my mind as I was thinking about starting the project. Like I said, I hadn't even started working on it yet, but this was something that was always in my mind. And, just at the time, 2008, I just didn't have the visual language to say what it is that I wanted to say. So then, fast forward to 2014, I've studied photography for a little bit, and, I spent a lot of time just, studying and researching images, starting with painting. And that's really how I found my legs and how this project took off bit by bit. So again, thinking of research. So at the time, I made the image. I wasn't sure if this was going to be a project, if this was going to be, something long-term, or if this was just something like a standalone image that I was going to make. At the time, I'd been photographing sports. I'd been photographing athletes. I was working with like Sports Illustrated, and I was photographing athletes on field. So this was a big departure from that. So I really didn't know what this was or what course to take. So again, I started with research, started looking at, what had come before and what was, around at the time to really, help guide um, the process. So of course I started with the Pietà, thinking of, the religious aspect of mother son and that connection. I grew up in that church where I made the first image. I grew up in this church. I used to work here for many years. Um, all the people in the church know me. So I always had that connection with church and also religious iconography as I, would go to the Met and just stare at, classical paintings. So there was always that backbone. And then, like I said, that's where I would start with the research. So I started with, of course, the Michelangelo on the left from 1498. And then on the right is a painting by Titian of the Pietà. The Pietà is the Virgin Mary holding the dead body of Christ after the crucifixion. So that, connection of mother son was really strong, and I, really like struck a nerve with me, thinking that this could be, a driving force for the project. Now, while I say that, it's important to also note that while I'm talking about mother son directly, because I know that relationship with my mother, under the larger umbrella and the larger context of what is going on right now, we have to acknowledge and we have to, make sure that you're fighting for, Black women, Black trans lives as well. You have to, fight for everyone that is in this umbrella, because we're all affected by this. You know what I'm saying? It's not just men being affected in this way. So why does this keep doing that? So again, I was looking at different versions of the Pietà by different artists just to see, what was out there, and, just to get other inspirations. These two versions of the Pietà by Andres Serrano, two vastly different interpretations. And, I'm seeing other artists, put their own spin on them, on the image, on the motif. Some more playful, some more serious. But the project really didn't, it was really with these two images that I really knew that this project was something that I had to investigate and move forward with. And on the left, it's by Renee Cox, titled Ain't Your Mama's Pietà from 1996. And on the right, Dr. David Driscoll's Behold Thy Son from 1956. And these were both really important pieces for me. On the left, Renee Cox, the artist, she is in the image. It was really a breakthrough thinking of the Black body in art. Black artists using the Black body, and that being in the museum, in the gallery. And that's something that I hadn't really considered, the power of, us having that agency over showing and depicting what it is that our reality is, not being told by someone else. So that was really, really important moving forward. And it just gave a way to speak about, Black masculinity, identity, and vulnerability. And again, reinforcing that idea of that mother-son connection. Like, this was, a really strong moment for me. On the right, Dr. David Driscoll, who actually passed away earlier this year, his piece, Behold Thy Son, was another really important piece. This piece, version of the Pietà, was painted 1 year after the murder of Emmett Till. Dr. David Driscoll was so impacted by that murder and that story that he felt compelled, that he had to, create this. So there was a parallel between, his strong feelings with Emmett Till and mine with Sean Bell. So that parallel really, helped to say, like, yeah, this is a project. This is something that needs to be investigated. This is something that I need to move forward with, bit by bit. And there's something that it would take time. Why every time I press it, the thing don't go? So this is where, where the project really, got its legs. And this is how I knew that this was something that I had to continue and photograph. And, I'm from New York. I could have easily, shot all these images here in the city, but this is an issue that is much wider than New York. I mean, I'm speaking of a national issue, even though this really is a global issue. But this is a national issue that I wanted to address. So it was important for me to get on the road to photograph families. All the subjects in the images are mother and son, or mother, son, and sons, and they're all related, because I can't fake that, the way a mother would hold her son. And there's again, more things that are important, thinking of skin and vulnerability and thoughts of protection. um but something else that's really important for the work is just this idea of the gaze, and it's a strategy that I use to photographically to hold the viewer's attention. The gaze of the mother looking into the viewer makes it difficult to walk away, or to just have a glance at and continue moving on. And again, back to research that really comes from this other version of the Pieta by William A. Bouguereau from 1876. There's something striking about Mary's eyes, and it's, again, just the difficulty of looking away. Like, this is, we're all, as artists, looking for strategies to hold the viewer. Because of the device, social media, cell phones, whatever it is, you're inundated with billions of images on a daily basis. Okay, so then as an artist, how do you keep a viewer grounded for, more than 3 seconds, more than 7 seconds, more than a minute? How do you get them to keep coming back to the images, over an hour, over a month? Have people live with the images. So that's something that I've always been thinking about with the project, and that was, like I said, one of the main strategies, because I think that the gaze from the mother is just so critical to the work. So we have the images of the mother and son, but again, I go back to research, looking at other representations of the body, just for inspiration moving forward. And I rediscovered the work of Kehinde Wiley, whose paintings literally come like directly from classical painting. And this was another breakthrough in the project, because it allowed me to, I was no longer glued to strict representation. I was able to, pose the bodies in a different way, but still be able to tell the same story. And that was important because, when I would meet these families, we don't have a lot of time to make the image. Like, I'm usually with them for maybe like an hour, maybe, between a half hour and 2 hours. But I don't know the scale of, the men, the women, the mothers, is the mother, really, is the son really big? If they're an older person, like, how could the mother hold them or cradle them? So I have to think about, how to work these compositions. So this really helped, just open up the project so that I would be able to pose, use different poses, but still be able to tell the same story. And again, using the same, depictions, again, strong, vulnerable, but again, still telling that same story, the same message being held across. And I feel that that was important, because then it's less, repetitive. That's another thing I try to avoid in the work. While it is the same set that I'm photographing, there's nuance in it. There's differences in each image, bit to bit. So we have the images of the mother and son, and those are, pretty strong and successful, but the project is still missing something. So again, back to research, I looked at the work of Frances Kearney and her series, Five People Thinking the Same Thing. And something about this really stood out for me. And that was, these portraits of people, but not looking at the camera. So now we really get to use the environment to, really consider, well, what it is that they're thinking. How do we use the environment to guide our read of the image, or put ourselves in the subject's place? What are they thinking about? And I thought that would be a strong way to, connect with not only the mothers in the project, but the mothers who have lost. their children due to police violence. You know, what do day-to-day activities look like? How are you supposed to move on, you know, after the tragedy? You know, oftentimes, obviously, rarely justice is served as far as the trial goes, but I mean, even still, that's not justice. These people, you know, should not have been murdered in the first place. So again, using this as another element of the project, I think helps, because I didn't want it to be redundant with just the image of the mother son, you know, over and over and over again. Although those images are strong, I felt that the series needed something else to, you know, almost like balance it off in a way. And again, you know, I'm thinking of this, you know, as artists, we're thinking of this like large image bank of images that we've seen, you know, over and over again, in different artists, and, you know, just things that are important. You know, this is the work of Carrie Mae Weems and the, you know, legendary Kitchen Table series from 1990. Again, this idea of the, you know, simple yet complex. You know, I you know, love this series. But this is just an example, like when I would, you know, see things when I was with, you know, with families, and I was like, oh, this reminds me of this. I'll absolutely use that as reference for my own work. But, you know, again, moving forward, we have the images of the mother sons. Those are strong. We have the images of the mother in isolation, and, you know, those are strong as well. But there still seemed to be something missing with the project, and I really struggled for a long time trying to figure out what that third element might be. And I didn't know if it was I need to have more images, maybe the son needed to come back in some sort of like redemptive way. I really didn't know what it was. So while I was in Chicago in 2016, I was photographing 6 families in 2 days, which was kind of intense. And you know how Facebook sends you like a little reminder that you've been friends with someone for a year or something like that. So Nefertiti, who was, oh my God, why does it keep doing this? This is Nefertiti. So I had photographed her the year before in 2015. And pretty much while I was in Chicago, she wrote this amazing poem when she reposted the image. And this is what she wrote. As I hold my son in my arms, there is nothing strange about him. He is indeed the fruit of my womb, the extension of his father and me, growing, stretching, reaching to the skies. There is nothing strange about him. He is heaven in my eyes, an angel in disguise, handcrafted into a beautiful soul. There is nothing strange about him, for he is the fruit that I have bared, which makes me whole. There is nothing strange about him. He is my son, he is my soul, and he is beautiful. I mean, you know, reading that still now and reading it then, it stops me like dead in my tracks. And that was really how I knew like this would be the final part of the project. It was the words from the mothers in the project tied together, and this would round out everything. So what I did was I put together a little questionnaire, and it was just like, you know, 6 questions, and I sent it to all the mothers in the project, and really just to get their ideas. And it was a range of, you know, you know, what do you feel when you see the image of you and your son? I always send the questionnaire after I have the image completed. Like once I have, so we make the image, a couple weeks later, I'll, you know, have the film developed and everything, and then I'll make the final image. And that's when I send the image back to them, and I send them the questionnaire. So they have a little, you know, breathing time from when we make the image to when they see the final product. And this is another like small screenshot of the list of responses. And I mean, you know, a lot of the responses are, you know, absolutely beautiful. And obviously it's something that I could never say. You know, the artist statement is my words. The images are my words, but having the texts from the mothers in the project really help round everything out. And, it's really beautiful because it's not just like they're all saying similar things, but it's not like the same exact sentence. They're really just, sharing this, honest truth of, the love they have for their children, and the real fears that they have when they go out, and, just how ridiculous this whole situation is. So I think that, the text is, really important. And, I have a couple others that I wanted to share with you guys. I mean, obviously I have a lot of them, but, I feel greatly protective and greatly aware of the love and connection I have in my heart and soul for my son. On the right, I feel sad that mothers actually have to go through this. My son was able to get up and put back on his clothes, others not so much. They are still mentally frozen in that position, that sadness, that brokenness. I feel guilty to be relieved that it's just a picture, because for others it's a reality. I feel scared. I feel next. I feel like Tyler could be the next hashtag. Is the last one I'll share with you. As I was gradually pulled into the scene and told about the pose, it began to make me think of the daily thoughts I have about my son. I have thoughts of love, change, determination, growth, and encouragement. I also have concerns regarding his health and safety as it relates to the growing conditions across this nation with African American males. There needs to be immediate attention to stop the killing of Black males and suffering of mothers. And again, the words are, so incredibly strong that it has to live on its own in the gallery. It can't be reduced to a caption. So when I show the work, typically in the solo shows, this is how the text is presented. So we can't speak about the project without speaking about the process. And the process is all tied to Lucy. Lucy's my camera. That's my 4x5. That's her right there. I'm like pointing on the screen. I know you can't see me pointing. So I shoot all of this on a 4x5 camera. This project is entirely shot on film, so sheet film. So it's all shot, one image at a time. That cloth that's hanging over the camera on the left side and around my shoulders on the right is the dark cloth that I have to, go under so that I can compose the image and make it all happen. So it's a process. It's not digital. It takes a while to make each image. Even though I work incredibly fast, it takes a while to, set everything up, make sure everything is focused, metered. But I felt that was important for the project because I didn't want to make like 100 images and then think that I could get, one out of that with digital. With the 4x5, you really have to approach it as a painter, where you're really building the scene, you're building everything, you're really taking everything into consideration, looking from edge to edge, and it's just a slower process. And, that's something that's really beautiful about working with the 4x5 and why I like it so much. It really just forces you to slow down, and especially with, everything being so instant today, it's nice to have that option to just, slow down, take a deep breath, and, create the image, piece by piece. And, something that's really important in the project is to note the performative aspect of it. And I know a lot of times we hear the word performance and we think of, we think of dance, or we think of video. But this also is performance. The mothers in the images have not lost their sons, but they know the reality that without, properly speaking to this issue, like this could happen to them. I mean, think of all of these stories that we've heard over the last, 5 years, 10 years, even just the last couple months, people losing their life, and for what? Like there's no explanation for it, and really no reason for it. I've heard all the excuses, and none of them make any sense. So it's like, it's really strong for these mothers to be able to put themselves in this position to do this, and I really give them all the credit for all this work, because obviously the project would be nothing without them, and it takes a lot to just be in this moment and be that vulnerable to be able to pose with your son as if this was a reality. So something also that's really important is the environment, where these images are shot. So like I said, I've been traveling across the country for the past 6 years photographing this. And, it's been important to get a mix of locations, because again, where these murders have happened have been, incredibly random places. Sometimes big cities, sometimes small cities, sometimes, a rural area, sometimes it's, just on the side of a road. So it's been important to travel, and I've been to, it's been a laundry list. Actually, I have a map that I can show you, actually where we've been to. But yeah, I've been from, I'm from New York, to California, Alabama, Texas, Minneapolis, Florida, Washington D.C., and on and on. And just using different indicators to show the neighborhood and see like these are all environmental, so this is all close to where these families either live or work. So like for instance, this image with Crystal, the text that said I fear that Tyler could be the next hashtag, this is Tyler, Crystal and Tyler, they live right across the street. Beth, they work like right around the corner. So this is very local to where all these families live. And as far as like scouting wise, a lot of people ask like, how do I find where to photograph folks? And thank goodness for Google Maps, because without that, I don't know what I would do. I don't drive classically. I'm a New Yorker. I don't do that driving stuff. So I will use Google Maps to pre-scout like the area, just to get an idea of the lay of the land, to see, like, oh, okay, this is a possibility. Maybe I can use this, this, and this. And sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, but it always just helps to give a sense of where it is that I'm going, and, just to get an idea before I get out there, because oftentimes when I'm traveling, I may not have the time to really do a good scout, especially if I'm going without an assistant. But a lot of times, just by the work of Google Maps, that has been enough to help. And again, I'm looking at the lay of the land in these different areas that we're photographing. I'm not looking for like culture, like I'm looking for cultural indicators, but I'm not looking for like the obvious like tourist, or like something that screamed, like if I was shooting an image in New York, I don't care about having the Statue of Liberty in the background to like scream like this is New York, or this is LA, or this is whatever. But I'm looking for more subtle reasoning behind it. How do the buildings look in Alabama as opposed to Florida, as opposed to Chicago? What does that look like? And using that as a backdrop. This is the map. This is where the project has gone. All the red X's are where I have photographed, and the triangles are where I am looking to go next. Um, the project is ongoing. You know, hopefully I'll be able to wrap it up in the next year. Um, I was really hoping to be on the road this year. Thankfully, I was able to get on the road in January um, to photograph in New Orleans, Arkansas, and Houston. Um, but of course, you know, due to the pandemic, I was not able to go to St. Louis yet. So, but you know, this is where I have left, and you know, like I said, hope soon soon the project will be over. I just want to show like this is the actual map. This lives like under my keyboard, so yeah, we've been working on this for a while. Put that there for now. Um, so I wanted to, before we wrap it up, I wanted to mention audience, and I guess it's something that I think is important to think about when you're an artist, and you know who you're making the work for, and I guess what the target audience is. Um, this work is, you know, it's performance, it's documentary, and it's fine art, you know, all kind of like wrapped up in one. And typically, you know, fine art, it would live in the gallery, live in museums. Um, but it's important. I really wanted to make it a point to share the work in spaces that are not just the typical gallery or museum, because not everybody can go to the gallery or the museum. Even though the gallery is free, not everybody feels welcome in that space. So I've been fortunate enough to be able to share the work in galleries such as Aperture Foundation, but also smaller spaces like this is Minka in Brooklyn, which is a holistic healing space. The Apartment Gallery in Harlem, which is literally the first floor of a brownstone, which is, you know, converted to a gallery space for exhibitions, so that, you know, the neighborhood can come by and people can, you know, feel, you know, welcome in a different capacity than it would be as to going to um, Chelsea or, you know, like a high gallery in the city. Um, you know, the audience, it's really thinking about the audience and who the work is for. Um, Obviously every artist is going to be like, yeah, my work is for everybody, but you know, it really is, you know, for the people. So I was interested in this capacity, but also interested in and this is at Brick in Brooklyn, which holds a lot of, you know, community events and public access stuff, but not just, you know, interior, but also public. I was fortunate enough a couple of years ago to be able to share the work with an organization called Art in Ad Places, where they did a installation of the work in a number of, oh my God, I keep wanting to say bus stops. They're not bus stops, they're phone booths. Phone booths, phone booths. One day I'll get that right. Phone booths in and around the Fulton Street Mall area here in Brooklyn. Um, and this was really cool because, you know, you see the scale of the image, but it's also, you know, it's large, but it's also really local. So it's, you know, how do people interact with it on a more local level where they're just walking by? Do they notice it? What do they notice about it? Does it, you know, give them pause? Um, and then also, I was fortunate enough through an organization called 14 by 48 last year to have the work on a billboard near Times Square. And again, you know, it was really important just being able to have this up in this space just for people to engage with. And you know, it's not about, you know, I mean, the information for the organization is at the bottom right corner of the billboard. And I have this billboard somewhere in the apartment now. It's like folding up, taking up space in the closet. Um, but my name isn't on it. The name of the project isn't on it. The name of the image isn't on it. And I kind of like that. I want it just for the image to be there, just in space, just to, you know, have some type of effect on the viewer. Um, Really, just, you know, think of the last time you've encountered an image like this in, you know, in a billboard or large in space. furthering on that, when's the last time you've seen an image of the black body not selling something? It's not advertising. It's not, there's no movie, there's no music, we're not selling sneakers, or, it's not an athlete. So just that little bit, to shift, the expectations was really important for me, and why I was really glad we were able to do this. Okay, we're almost there. We're winding down. I'd be in a lot of trouble if I didn't mention my boy Eli Kintz, who this is his piece called "Fruits of Our Labor" from 1994. He's a educator and artist here in the city, and he has this book called "I Remember Daddy," which is somewhere over there. I'm not going to reach. No, I'm not going to reach for it because I'll probably knock something over. But the first time I encountered the book, I Remember Daddy, which is basically like a long form poem chronicling the life of the black male from Africa up until, through the Atlantic slave trade to, living in America. And there was this, audio piece with someone reading it. And then these figures were zooming in and out on this little screen. And, as it's like super close up, it looks like it's a teardrop. And as it zooms out further and further, you realize that it's a figure, that it's a lynched person. So that kind of ties to where the title comes from. Strange Fruit is, obviously a song performed by Billie Holiday, but, the Nina Simone version is the version that I always really connected with. Strange Fruit, speaking of, strange fruit hanging from the popple tree. They're talking about lynching in the antebellum South. Different black people being murdered and being lynched, that being strange fruit. And the title Stranger Fruit is a play off of that, where, the bodies aren't really being, lynched anymore, although that has happened in the last few months as well. But they're being literally, picked off the street. And, this is really how, it came to be, as far as like, the title Stranger Fruit. And that's it. This is the last image of the slideshow. We made it. I'm so proud of y'all. Give yourself a pat on the back. And yeah, this is, like I said, so the work is still in progress. I'm hoping to get back on the road in the next, hopefully this fall, to continue photographing, and eventually it will become a book. I'm really excited for that. And I think that's it. Y'all have questions? I think I have answers. Hopefully, maybe, possibly.
Absolutely. We can start taking questions. The chat room is open, and our program director is managing that. If y'all want to send in your questions. I have one that's been on my mind, John.
Of course.
What is the story behind Lucy? How did you come into this camera? Why the name Lucy? If you can give us I'm absolutely fascinated with large format photography in the 4x5 format. If you can give us an overview of that as well.
Sure. So the first image that I made from the project, the one in the church, is the only image that I did not shoot on Lucy. That I borrowed that camera, a large format camera, from the school that I was working at, New York Film Academy, to make that. Again, because I knew that I was interested in large format, and it was something that I always wanted to try and wanted to shoot with. And I'd used it a few times, but I knew that the magnitude of what I was interested in with this work, I knew that it had to be, I couldn't achieve it with digital. I basically, I was using, I still use digital. I shoot, digital, medium, and large format. But I typically use large format for my portraits, medium format for a mix of portraits and stuff. But like most of my athletes' work is still shot on digital. but it was just something about the process, something about, working one image at a time. And I just really wanted to, slow down the process and just, literally just, take a few deep breaths. And it's just a different way of connecting with the subjects. That was important. The other thing about about using Lucy is when you put the film holder into the camera, you can't look through the camera anymore because there's a film holder there. So you can't really see what you're shooting. So that means you have to take the dark cloth off, and you really have to connect with the subject in a different manner. When you're using, I don't have my digital camera handy, but when you're using a digital camera, you're behind here the entire time when you're shooting. It's a different feeling when you're here and when you're actually looking directly at the subject. It's a different connection. So I thought that was something that was really important and that I wanted to, focus on while I was making these images. The name Lucy, how do you get the name Lucy? Everyone asks. So first of all, how did we get the camera? So when I stopped working, that church from the first image, I used to work there for Jeebus, like 15 years, working on Sundays, taking care of the people, taking care of the folks that used to come in. And when I left, they pulled together a bunch of money and gave it to me when I left. Because, I've known these people for like forever. They've known me since I was, in the sandbox. And that money became Lucy. I built her for, I think, under $1,000, everything piece by piece. And
Wow.
I mean, yeah, film is expensive and, shooting is expensive. I mean, each image comes out to about $8 when you factor in like price of film and processing. So it's, that's why you really have to make sure that everything is, pretty sharp when you create it. But yeah, I bought the camera and I was like, all right, I got the camera out the box. I was like, oh, okay, your name's going to be Lucy. And boom, there it is. No muss,
All
no
right,
fuss.
all right. Okay, we've got some questions coming in from the audience. I have one from Magdalena Soul. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. It says, Jon, your work is exquisite, moving, powerful. Did anyone you approached turn you down? And if so, why?
Absolutely. That's a great question. Yeah, because the project, well, it's a two-tiered answer. The project is very emotional, obviously. And it's very difficult to, for the mothers to put themselves in that position. And many people, just didn't feel comfortable, going through and doing that. Either because of, fear of this actually becoming a reality, or, just didn't want themselves to be in that position or to have their sons in that position. So yeah, I mean, for a number of people, I couldn't give you a number because I really don't know, have turned it down. I mean, they appreciate the work and the importance of it, but it was maybe a little too much for them, and that's completely understandable. The other part of it is just like, I guess, through the network. So okay, everyone asked this. So like how I find the subjects is through like a network of folks that I know. Like the first year was just like family and friends, and then it's just like other people that I know like in various cities. And I'd reach out and say like, hey, do you know anyone who you think might be interested in this? And that would like snowball into like, potential people, being interested. But it's kind of a mixed bag. Some people would be interested. Some people would just straight up not care. But I mean, that's just the way it is. Just, keep on pushing. But yeah, there have been no's. Definitely have been no's. Always no's, more yeses than no's. Just got to keep on pushing through. But such is life.
Absolutely. And let's see, we have a question from Katie Haas. Hi, I'm also curious about connecting with subjects and learning a little bit more about how you went about finding and connecting with mothers and their sons.
Yeah. So, oh, I do have something that's close. So every city except for LA, um, like I said, was relying on the network of folks that I know, whether it be friends that I know are from the city, or some people have reached out independently through social media. Not many, but a few people, a few mothers have, to be a part of the project. Some folks have shared the work on Facebook or whatever to try to get folks, and some people have like direct connections with people and organizations who they think could lead to someone. I mean, all of it helps, because like I said, it is difficult, because we're not just or think about it. So we're looking at, I don't always, I'm typically looking for families like mothers and sons typically older the age than of 7. Um, Not because there's anything wrong with babies, just like I have a few images with young kids. So I kind of don't want to shoot a lot of them. It's more interesting when it's a larger range. So, adults, adolescents, it gives you just more to play with visually. So, um, oh, train of thought just got derailed. Where are we? Um, how the hell did I just lose my train of thought? But anyway, so in LA was the only place that I went to for a month, and I didn't have any strong connections. So I took a month off of work, and I made this little book, and I literally just, walked around the hood, and I would show people images of what the project was. And I would tell them, hey, my name is Jon Henry, and I'm here for the month of May, and I'm working on this project. And I would, reach out to African American mothers or people who I thought, would have children, and, see if they were interested, or if they knew someone who was interested, and just really went through there. But like I said, I would have like all three, elements of the project in this little book to, show them what I was doing, and also have, like samples of the text in here as well. So that was pretty crazy. But again, you got to do what you got to do for the work, because that is how we get down. I think, but what I was going to say before I got derailed was, the difficulty in scheduling is, obviously I'm working around their schedule, what days work for them, but I'm also looking for, one, obviously mothers and sons, but do the sons live with their mothers? Not often, like sometimes, but not often. Do they live in an area where, are they close enough proximity where we can like actually get together? Because that's also an issue. A lot of people, like, I mean, my mom lives in Flushing, Queens. It's like an hour away. That's not a big deal. But like if they're like out of the city, or, states apart, they could be interested in the project, but then, we can't do anything. So it's difficult, putting it all together and getting everyone, I guess, lined up and organized for the shoot. But yeah, it's a lot of hard work. But like I said, we've made it happen, thankfully. I hope that answers the question. Sometimes I'm a little all over the place. I don't know where I am.
So you mentioned, you've got to do what you got to do for the work. I'm curious, as a fellow artist, sometimes you have no idea what the work is. I think you mentioned that much earlier in the talk when you were starting. You didn't know if this was going to be a project or a one-off. So how, as you're trying to get subjects and connect with people earlier in the process, how do you pitch that to someone if you're still figuring it out, or do you just fake it until you make it, or some combination?
Thankfully, there was no fake it till you make it in this. I kind of had a clear sight line of what it is that I wanted to do and how I wanted to approach it from the beginning. So when I had the first image, I literally sat with that image from the church for about 5 months before I made the second image. And I just started, like I said, I started out local. I started reaching out to friends who were in the area who could potentially fit it. So I think, 2015, I think all the images that I made, except for Nefertiti, who reached out independently through social media, everybody was either friend or family. So I would literally tell them like, this is, you know, what I'm interested in. This is what I'm doing. And I still have like kind of like the same email that I send to all potential families. Just like, this is, you know, this is who I am. This is why I'm doing it. And this is why I'm interested in it. And these are the expectations that I would have, you know, for the shoot. The boys, the men, they're, you know, shirtless and barefoot. Mothers wear what, you know, whatever you want, as long as you're comfortable. I don't care. Um, and the images are environmental, so, and it doesn't take very long. Like, you know, it can be as fast as 30 minutes, as long as 2 hours. So I have, you know, and then obviously after I had, you know, a few images, I'd be able to send them the images. So like, this is okay. So this is what it is that we're shooting. This is what it is that we're doing. And it just kind of grew from there. And it was just, you know, just chipping away. I mean, it's you know, it's a long-term project. You know, now in, you know, year 6 of it. And I mean, I think 2018, I only made 1 image. Last year, I made more images in a single year than any year combined. But it's just, you know, like that first full year, first year of 2015, the first full year was just, you know, starting local and then, you know, branching from there. Like, who do I know? And I'm, you know, I'm like showing the work to like my, you know, small network, and, you know, just trying to, you know, I guess get feedback and try to grow from there. But it's all pretty small and just, you know, sprouted outwards. And there are no expectations here, you know, with the work. Really is just all driven by, you know, the desire to, you know, make this statement and, you know, follow through on the project, because, you know, um, I don't have like some, you know, large MFA school or whatever, you know, like pushing this. You know, this is all just me just working independently, you know, just trying to make it all happen. So, um, so that is it.
Absolutely. Sorry, I'm just reading through this question that just came in and kind of sitting with it. So I'll just read it out loud and maybe we can both sit with it. But you mentioned a lot of the mother's feelings around this work. I'm curious what conversations or reflections look like with the male subjects, perhaps even with the younger children. I think about how hard it can be to get my nephew to sit still for a photo at age 5 or 6.
Okay. You mean like, I guess we can answer both. Do you mean like just like just to, like, for those younger subjects, just to like be, you know, focused enough to shoot it, or actually like what the project means for them to understand? I don't know. Okay, whatever. We can answer both of them. As far as like them understanding, obviously, you know, for the younger ones, they're too young to understand, you know, what's at stake and, you know, what all this means. They'll understand that, you know, like years down the road. Dealing with the younger kids can be difficult. Yeah, I mean, you know, kids are kids and they like to, you know, run around and do stuff, and that's cool. So one of the things that I like to do is I'll, you know, 'cause I love the kids. I'll show them Lucy, like when I have the image set up and everything, and like maybe I'll have their mom stand in frame. I'll invite them to come around and take a look on the back of the camera, and they go under the hood and they give them the loop and they look and they're like, why is it upside down? Why is it backwards? And we talk like, okay, well, this is why it's upside down and backwards, you know? And they're like, wow, that's really cool. And sometimes that'll calm them down just a little bit. Um, there have only been there've only been like a handful of like, I'd say maybe 2 or 3 of young kids who are just like a little too like loopy when it came time to make the image. But I mean, you know, you got to give them credit as well. The kids are, you know, the kids are amazing, and they've really, you know, held true for posing, if that answers the question.
Looks like that's a yes.
Hoorah.
And I want to go back a little bit to audience and who is your audience. I know you said this is for the people. Some artists are making it explicitly, make their work explicitly for a Black audience. Is your work for all people? Is it for Black people? I think, being a Black woman, there's a level of care that I feel when I look at your work. There's something in that stops me. I think the first time I saw these on Instagram, I think was very, very soon after a recent shooting and being inundated with all of this media and kind of like I've been doing research on lynching photos and lynching picnics and postcards, etc. And having that in mind and seeing all of these photos from the media and coming across your work, there was a different level of care, and there was a different, totally different viewpoint that, I could feel more in communion with your work, even though it is recreating horror. There was something so different in coming across your photos. So, who is your audience? Who is this work for in your heart?
Yeah, that's an important distinction that you mentioned, and I think I guess I'm going to probably go with the classic answer that the work is for everyone, but I truly mean that in a couple, like in many regards. One, for the African American community, they're going to absorb these images in a way similar to like what you just said. There's an amount of care in the image that where it has this beauty, even though it's telling this really traumatic experience, and this community has already endured so many traumas. If we're just thinking of like these murders that have happened, how many millions of times have you seen it on Instagram, on whatever, on the news, on like that affects you like greatly. And I know like many of my friends, and like when like this had been happening, especially with George Floyd, and even if you like before that even happened, like a couple weeks earlier, before all this kind of like exploded, while we were just dealing with the pandemic here in Brooklyn, there were like videos of cops just beating the shit out of Black and brown people, and you're just like, why? And you're seeing that stuff shared over and over and over again, and it's exhausting. So we really have to worry about our mental health when dealing with this. So the African American community has like a response to the work where it's like they understand what this is and appreciate that it's being addressed in this manner. But yeah, well, I'm saying it's for everyone, because when you strip away everything in the project, we're really talking about a mother and a son. And everyone has a mother, so your mother knows what that relationship is like. Okay, well, now what if you have you have a mother, but your son or your child is murdered by a police officer, and for what? For absolutely nothing. Like, what does that feel? So many people have reached out, many families of white people, Black people, Asian, Hispanic, whatever, have reached out saying that they know that they could never have to worry about this for their community, but now this has like opened their eyes to see like, wow, this is something that is real for the African American community, that Black and brown bodies have to endure this type of fear, this type of suffering, and again, why, what are the answers, and this larger just this larger theme of hatred and fear, but fear leading back to hatred, and just because it's not just bad apples, it's systemic, you know what I'm saying? So like so it's so yeah so the work is for, again, I know it's kind of a cop out to say the work is for everyone, but it's to try to bridge that gap so that there can be some type of acknowledgement. Like, people, like, if that this isn't right, that what's going on, like, there is an issue there. Okay, well then how can we at least acknowledge, like, this is a problem, and then how can we then move forward to try to solve this problem?
Let's see, we've got a question that touches on our current situation with COVID and Corona. Those are the same thing. Anyway, from Connor Miller, thank you, Jon. This talk has been amazing and it's provided revealing and meaningful context behind your work. I wish more people could be watching this talk and hearing about and seeing Stranger Fruit and all that it represents. We are recording, by the way. There seemed to be a clear trajectory for this project, and you mentioned the pandemic stopping travel. I know visual interpretation changes drastically when viewing in person versus virtually. How are you adapting? How are you still reaching your audience?
Well, the work has been, shared like crazy in the most, recent months. Again, sadly, that it takes, lives to be lost to see the importance of this project and what it stands for. And again, this is not something new. This is not like, we just started this project this year. This has been something we've been working on since 2014. And obviously thinking about since 2006. So, blessings are blessings. So I've been grateful that I've been able to, get the work out there virtually. This fall, there are going to be the work will be up in a couple exhibitions. In September, it'll be at Big Day Film Collective, which is in New Jersey, Collingswood, basically the greater Philadelphia area. It's like 5 minutes from Philadelphia. That will be a physical exhibition. There probably will be a virtual, like a virtual part, like for people to see online, because I know it is kind of crazy right now. The work's going to be in Henderson State University, I think, which is in Arkansas. A couple pieces are going there for a group show. University of Kentucky will have a couple pieces for a group show in October. We're going to be in Portland Seattle in October, and then Portland in January 2021. So there are a number of places where a number of shows lined up for the work, obviously, which is great, and a couple. There's like one big publication that's doing a story on the work that I can't share yet, but that's about to come out in like a couple weeks. So, So we're getting the work out there, bit by bit, and it's a process. So we're just trying to keep going and keep getting the work out there, not stopping.
It's fantastic. Definitely looking forward to the one in Collingswood. That is right around the corner for me.
Yeah. So I'll be there installing it soon. So yeah, like early September.
Awesome.
Is when that'll be.
Awesome. Well, we are cutting it close on time, so I want to start wrapping it up. I think that's a great stopping point. For any of these dates, any of your upcoming exhibitions, keeping tabs on your work in the future, where can we direct people? Where's the best place to keep in touch with you?
Instagram is probably the best because I post pretty much all the updates there. I do have a newsletter that I send out as well. you just kind of have to remind me. Like you'd have to like send me an email and just like remind me so that I can add you. Because typically, basically, I made the newsletter for all the mothers in the project to like keep them so that like, they all know like exactly like what's coming out and where their work is going and this, that, and the third. And now like everybody's piggybacked onto that email. So yeah, feel free, you can like, shoot me an email and just remind me about that, because I'll be sending out a newsletter in probably a couple of weeks with the info on that publication and all the shows. But yeah, that and Instagram are like the easiest ways to find out.
Perfect. And so we have your Instagram. It's at Who is the Master on Instagram. And what is your email?
Email it's on Instagram as well. It's info@jonhenryphotography.com. JON. Make sure you spell it right. Too many Jon Henrys in this world.
Perfect. And for anyone still asking questions, we will also have more information on our Instagram at Insight Photography VT for Jon, with Jon's info. So just lastly, I want to thank you so much for talking with us today, Jon. This has been amazing. I'm a huge fan of your work. This was absolutely wonderful opportunity to have. So I wish you so much luck in the future. I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated. Thank you all for coming by, and keep in contact. I reply to emails. Well, I try to.
All right. So thank you, everyone. Everyone stay safe out there. Keep in touch with our Instagram and our Facebook. We will be doing this every Wednesday at noon. So we'll see you next week with Evan Lockhart. He's another photographer. Thank you once more to Jon. Have a great rest of your week. Stay safe. Good luck with everything.
Hoorah.